The first reading and the Gospel have to do with intensity and sincerity of prayer. It is something that we need to look into because it concerns us all, and probably more than we think. The way in which one person can affect history by his sincerity of prayer and his very sincerity of being is seen in the story of Abraham and Lot and Sodom. Destruction is menacing that part of the world. In the Second World War, it is interesting to see how Our Lady protected that place where the message of Fatima was being lived in Nagasaki. The nuclear bomb destroyed all around, but Our Lady protected this little place where she was honoured in a particular way. In the same way, we can be sure that where we enthrone the Lord and His Blessed Mother, and where we sincerely pray, where the Rosary is well celebrated, is well prayed, not said, but engaged in, prayed with the heart on a regular basis, then Our Blessed Lady will have her mantle of protection upon that place. We need to protect our homes. Sacramentals are important. It is not indifferent whether we invite the Trojan horse into our hearth. I mean, all that comes through the airwaves. Right now we are inviting Satan directly into our abodes. We cannot worship God and demons, and it is not an indifferent choice to allow words of blasphemy, violence, vulgarity, and generally unpleasant to come into our places of dwelling. If we wish to be with angels and with Our Blessed Lady, to have the Lord walking among us in our home, we need to be coherent. We need to realize that we cannot play two games at the same time. And so, if we want protection upon our place of dwelling, we need to be armoured against what is only too willing to come in. And it is something which concerns our very soul, for we need protection too. And we need not only to have some blessed object around us, but we also need to make sure that the armour is secure, that we do not invite those demons into our inmost being, that the inner sanctum of the soul is protected, remembering that we can also invite demons in by engaging with just the machine that might be in our pocket. Many people now, good people, do not just have a mobile phone, but a whole system of communication with all and sundry in their pocket. Because the new type of mobile phone, the smartphones, are windows into the beyond, and the demons can come into them because of the whole link they have with the cybersphere. It's not just a mobile phone anymore in many cases, but other things are there. So the demons are closer to us than we think. With regard to the Gospel, the Lord is indicating in this homely form of His prayer, the Lord's Prayer, how the simplicity of our words coming from the heart do have power of impetration. He gave this model of prayer. It is not long, but it is something which contains it all. We just need enough for the day. We don't have to have a banquet, but bread, sustenance, the essential. much of our existence is spent on the non-essential. Today, as it happens, we are burying a friend of mine, and then one sees what is essential and less essential when one stands at the grave's edge. There, what goes with us is only the essential. And so, let us be careful. The Lord is touched by sincere prayer, and we can brush God aside by much vocal prayer which is not sincere, and in which we avoid God by using prayer just to fulfill our duty. It is therefore an invitation, this Gospel, together with the reading from Genesis, to an examination of conscience on whether we are pulling really on God, whether we are pleading like a child, or whether we are muttering prayers when we are engaged in contact with heaven. Some Protestants poke fun at those who use set prayers as though they were superior. That is a form of spiritual pride, for they have no right to judge who is engaged with God. The advantage of prayers which are laid down for us is that they give freedom so that one can, within that atmosphere, engage with the heart without having to find the words, especially in prayer groups. But then it doesn't stop there. It has to be followed through precisely with the heart. But having said that, the renewal of prayer in many circles since the Second Vatican Council, in prayer groups and in intensity of prayer during the liturgy itself, because it's in our own language, the language of the heart, as Paul VI put it, then this is something which is to be taken on board. For the Lord wanted renewal of prayer at the Second Vatican Council, but we must not abuse that to go into some neo-Protestantism, inventing when there's no place for an invention. We take on board both what is received and what the Spirit is inspiring us to do. It's not either or, but both and, but always in obedience and in sincerity. And sincerity comes through precisely in obedience when it comes to liturgical prayer. It becomes insincere if we don't follow the actual prayers laid down when they are laid down. There is plenty of elasticity now within what is laid down, not to have to disobey. The Lord is not fooled. He sees who is truly praying and who is behaving in a disobedient way. I heard recently about a celebration in Italy where actually a bishop was celebrating a Mass for a group of cyclists who were doing some marathon or something. It was celebrating something for their intention, that they might be protected, but had it stopped there, there would have been no harm. He, however, even though he was a bishop, felt inclined to identify himself with them, and at the end of the celebration took a bicycle, put himself on it, and cycled round the altar in church, bishop though he was. Well, without judging in any way any singular person, one does see there the kind of thing that has been happening as a result of renewal gone out of control. God sees what is done for His glory and what is done so as to, in some way, be interesting. God Himself is interesting enough without having to make use of the Church so as to in some way excel. But it can happen also more subtly than that. It can happen in the itch that we might have always to be at the amble, always to be heard. Prayer is God-centered and not man-centered, and anything either in a prayer group or in a liturgical context which makes it too much orientated towards attention being drawn to man is in some way bound to be depriving those present from the blessings that actually secretly they really want and need. So God is touched by sincerity of prayer, and this is what the Lord is asking in the Lord's Prayer, and what he actually was blessing in the case of Abraham and all these just people who from the heart pleaded with him. Children pray very sincerely, and they are often heard. There is great simplicity in a child engaged in simple faith with his Maker and with our Blessed Lady. It is touching to see a child at prayer. They somehow are close to God by nature. Just the other day I had little travelling children here, so I gave 2 of them rosaries and the little one a teddy bear because she was handicapped. But I noticed straight away how the one who had made her first communion already had the instinct to make the sign of the cross over the one who was handicapped with the rosary and to engage straight away with our Blessed Lady. They have the natural faith of the simple. Heaven is very close to the simple child, not contaminated. We do not need to get in the way of that and think they have to have all in the way of the latest mod con. A child is uncontaminated until we often contaminate that child. So, with regard to this Sunday, let us take with us at least this. Next time we are engaged in prayer, let us discreetly have the instinct to examine ourselves. Am I actually engaging, or am I in automatic pilot?